Welcome to the video portion of the Judges Education Seminar regarding the Danish Swedish Farmdog. This video is intended to provide accurate and consistent information to judges evaluating the DSF. When considering the information to be presented, please remember that the breed standard is the ultimate authority. This video will present the following: the history of this old and honored breed, the work this breed performs and the dog's character, what is in the breed standard, which points are disqualifying, considerations when judging the breed, a look at related and similar breeds, the general health and well-being of the DSF, and we provide a series of photographs demonstrating breed-typical dogs. A very special thanks to the Danish Swedish Farmdog Club of Denmark and the Ross Club for Danish Swedish Farmdogs of Sweden for sharing this presentation and for all of their help and support. The Danish Swedish Farmdog is fully approved in the FCI. In the FCI, the breed standard is FCI Group 2, number 356. The date of publication of this standard was May 6, 2019. The breed will be found today in AKC's miscellaneous group as of June 30th, 2021. Let's discuss the history of the breed. No one knows the origin of the breed with certainty, but the breed is very old. Dog skeletons found in Viking burial sites are similar to farm dog types. In any case, typical Danish Swedish farm dogs have been found in all of old Denmark, from Scania to Schleswig-Holstein, and even in Normandy. It is evident that the breed has existed and been an important part of family and farming life throughout centuries in Denmark and southern Sweden. Old paintings and some of the earliest photography includes these small dogs, which without any doubt are the forefathers of the current population. Until the 1960s, this little farm dog could be found all over the countryside in Denmark and southern Sweden. During the industrialization, there were fewer and fewer small farms in Denmark and Scania. At the same time, the population of farm dogs decreased. Fortunately, a few country folks continued the breeding of the dogs. This was, however, entirely unorganized. In Sweden, some generations of the breed had already been recorded in a non-official registry. The handwritten records date back to the early 1960s. The dogs had been recorded as Scania Terriers. The Danish and Swedish kennel clubs began to compare notes. It became obvious that the breed was the same in both countries and that it was indeed not a terrier, but a pincer-type dog. The registration of the farm dogs and a controlled breeding program was launched. Throughout the 1970s, some people involved with the Danish Kennel Club became aware that perhaps here was an interesting dog breed. During the 1980s, it became clear to the Danish Kennel Club Committee for National and Forgotten Breeds that it was important to save the breed. The awareness was also directed to southern Sweden, as this had been part of the old Danish farming country. The breed standard ultimately named the Danish Swedish Farmdog through the work of two judges, Ole Stanskar of Denmark and Lars Adeheimer of Sweden. In 1986, the Swedish Kennel Club held its first certification of the new breed, and around 100 dogs were approved and recorded in the Swedish Kennel Club pedigree. While the Swedish pedigree has been closed for certification since 2005, the Danish pedigree remains open for new certifications, which, though in very limited numbers, has occurred as recently as 2022. In 1987, the first 130 farm dogs were registered in the Danish Kennel Club's X registry, and in 1989 the breed was shown officially for the first time in Denmark at the World Dog Show in Bella Center. Through close cooperation between the Danish Kennel Club and the Swedish Kennel Club, the breed was accepted by FCI as provisional in 2008 and on a definitive basis in 2019. The farm dog's jobs were many and had many characteristics. First of all, along with cats, the DSF kept mice, rats, and other vermin away from stables and houses. This is an important ability which continues to be well preserved in the dogs. The DSF is a cold-blooded murderer when it comes to rodents. The farm dog also barked a loud alert when a stranger was approaching the farm, the purpose being to announce the stranger's presence, not to chase him away. That they alert when someone arrives is still an important ability. It is expected that they quit barking once the owner has accepted and let the visitor in. Because the farm dog is full of spunk and always happy, they are also the kids' playmates. The same abilities also took them to the circus. They are friendly, outgoing, open-minded, and attentive. Consequently, willing learning behavior characterizes the breed. All of these qualities, therefore, are highly desired. Some farm dogs were also used in hunting and for help to bring cows in from the field. However, these utilities, hunting and herding, were not originally among the main purposes of the breed, so are therefore not necessarily sought or required. Even though the farm dog originally, amongst others, was used as a guard dog, it is important to highlight that it must never show aggression when it barks at strangers approaching. A reserved and shy farm dog has a completely atypical temperament which breeders consider strongly unwanted. The DSF must be friendly and while greeting do so with a high-lifted and wagging tail. The farm dog is bright and agile. It is flashing fast, an important ability when it has to catch rats and mice. Now it's time to take a look at the breed standard. At this writing, the Danish Swedish Farmdog is in the miscellaneous group. The Danish Swedish Farmdog Club of America has applied for full recognition in the working group, and it is hopeful that it will be granted in 2024 or 2025. As was mentioned, the AKC breed standard was written in cooperation with the breed clubs in Denmark, Sweden, and the United States. The Danish Swedish Farm Dog is utilized as a farm dog and a companion dog. It is important to note that the farm dog is a pincer type rather than a terrier type. The farm dog worked the farm by catching mice and rats and acting as a doorbell. It was also a companion dog. In these pictures we see dogs that are of type. On the left we see a male dog. The male is a masculine dog and has an overall excellent appearance, well-marked forechest, and good proportions. On the right is a very typical female dog of excellent proportions and appearance. Regarding the height of the Danish Swedish Farm Dog, males should be 13.5 to 14.5 inches plus or minus 1 inch. Females should be 12.5 to 14 inches plus or minus a half an inch. Even though there is a significant tolerance in height, one must remember that the overall impression must be of a small, compact dog. Farm dogs develop slowly. This should be considered during judging. The breed is not fully developed until the age of 3 or 4 years, in some cases even longer for males. The dog should never be elegant in appearance. In these 3 images we see the same dog at different ages. In the top left, the dog is 13 months old. In the top right, the dog is 4 years old. In the bottom picture, the dog is 6 years old. As you can see, the dog changes significantly, and this is typical for the DSF. The dog should be slightly longer than tall. It must not give the impression of either long or short legs, however. The body should be slightly rectangular, at a ratio of 9 to 10. The proportions between the depth of the chest and the height at the withers should be 1 to 2. With regard to behavior and temperament, the dog should be alert, attentive, and lively. The head of the DSF should be triangular in shape and a bit small in proportion to the body. The relatively small head should form an equilateral triangle. The rather broad skull creates the base, and the head is gradually narrowing towards the muzzle, which is slightly shorter than the skull. The triangular shape is only correct when the cheeks are not too pronounced. On the other hand, they should be well filled under the eyes. The skull should be rather broad and slightly rounded. It is important that the stop on the head is well defined without being too deep. It is also important to observe that the stop is an actual stop. The arch of the eyebrows can make a poor stop appear better. The skull is only slightly rounded. Round and or coarse skull and snub nose gives a completely atypical impression. It is also atypical to have a narrow skull or flat cheeks. This gives a terrier-like expression. In these image profiles we see an excellent head with correct proportions, well-filled muzzle, and correct stop. The profile of the head on the right is in good proportions, yet it is a little bit snipey. Better stop could be desired, and the muzzle could be more well-filled. This is also an example that a well-defined arch of the eyebrows can make a poor stop appear better. The images shown here are excellent examples of typical male and female heads, with the male on the left and the female on the right. Please note that while typical, the image of the female shows that this dog has slightly large and heavy ears. Also note that clear differentiation between the genders is important. The male head clearly has a masculine expression and the female a feminine expression. The image seen on the left is a breed-typical head of an older male, clearly masculine without exaggeration. On the right we see a typical head of an older female, clearly feminine without exaggeration. The eyes of the Danish Swedish Farmdog should be medium-sized, slightly rounded, and neither protruding nor sunken. The dog should have an attentive and kind expression. The DSF should have dark eyes. Slightly lighter eye color is permissible in dogs with brown nose leather, as is found in the chocolate brown and on some yellow dogs. Completely round, protruding, and small and or deep-set eyes are false. The eyes should be as dark as possible. Dogs with yellow or brown spots often have lighter eyes which are harmonious with the color of the spots. Even with these colors in the markings, light yellow eyes are not desirable. Occasionally we see eyes that are set too much on an angle or slanted, which disturbs the expression. One or two blue eyes occur occasionally. The breed standard calls for dark eyes. Blue eyes are undesirable and should be considered a fault. The image shown here on the left is an excellent male head, but the eyes are lighter than desired. The image to the right shows a female with the expression disturbed by upright ears. Further, the eyes are too round and the head shape does not give the impression of being triangular. Ears should be medium-sized. They may be rosed or buttoned. In both cases, the fold should be just above the skull. With button ears, the tip should lie close to the cheeks. Heavy, long, hound-like ears are unwanted. It takes away from the impression of a small head. The breed can have either rose ears or button ears, but it's not unusual to see one with one of each. Upright ears is a serious fault, and this must be reflected in the judgment. The farm dog uses the ears quite a lot, and its mood is often reflected in how it carries its ears. It is not unusual to see a dog which at one moment has rose ears and at the next moment button ears. The ears, however, must neither be too high or too low set. Here the image on the left shows correct rose ears. The image on the right shows correct button ears that are not too heavy and not too big. In the image on the left, we see this male has ears that are much too large, and the eyes are too deep set. The image on the right shows a dog with rose ears, but they are both set and folded too high, which gives a much too flighty expression. Aside from the ears, the eyes on this dog appear to be a bit too protruding, which further disturbs the expression. With regard to the facial region, first of all, the muzzle should be well developed and gradually narrowing towards the nose, but must not give a snipey impression. The muzzle should be slightly shorter than the skull. The nose bridge should be straight. Regarding the teeth and the jaws should be strong. A scissors bite with even and well-developed incisors should be present. A level bite is tolerated. Regarding the nose, the color should be in accordance with the color of patches on the body. Looking to the bite of the farm dog, since the farm dog is a rat dog, it is important that both jaws and teeth be well formed. Weak and narrow muzzles with narrow jaws and small teeth must be judged as a fault. A level bite is accepted, but undershot bite must be judged as a serious fault. Turning now to the neck of the Danish Swedish Farmdog, it should be of medium length, strong and slightly arched, with no throatiness. In males particularly, the desired slightly arched neckline gives the neck a powerful impression. Loose throat skin is a fault. Since the head is rather small, the neck can appear more powerful than it is. The neck must never give an elegant impression. A neck that is too long is considered a fault. The image here at the left shows a good strong neck of correct medium length. The dog at the right has a neck which is too long and appears to be elegant. The body of the DSF should be compact with good substance. Its top line should demonstrate a strong back with a slightly arched short loin and a slightly rounded croup. If the tail is set too high, the croup will be too flat, and this gives the impression of the terrier type. The loin should be short, broad, and slightly arched. The body is substantial because of the deep and roomy rib cage, which also must have a good spring of ribs. The rib cage must be relatively wide compared to the size of the dog. This gives good room for heart and lungs. The long rib cage and short loin makes for an only slightly tucked up belly. The front of the DSF is slightly broader than the rib cage. The forechest should be well defined. The chest should reach to the elbow. Lack of depth in the chest and narrow in the front is a fault. Now looking at the rib cage. The ribs should be well sprung. The rib cage must be relatively wide compared to the size of the dog. Looking at the underline and tuck up, the belly should be only slightly tucked up. Only a slight tuck up because the dog has a long rib cage and a short loin. The slightly rounded croup must never be confused with a dropping or sloping croup. A sloping croup does not match with the breed's free movement. The image on the left demonstrates the correct loin and croup. The image on the right shows a too flat loin and croup, here further combined with a high tail set. Here on the left we see a dog with a long rib cage, well-defined forechest, and a correct underline. On the right we see a dog with too short of a rib cage, too tucked up underline, and no spring of ribs. We see here on the left a correct front and correct width in the front. On the right we see a dog that is too narrow in the front. When examining the tails of the DSF, the tail should not be set too high. A long tail or natural bob of any length is acceptable. The croup structure is important to the tail. The slightly rounded croup causes the tail not to be set too high. If the tail is set too high, the croup is too flat. This gives the impression of the terrier type. In the images shown here, on the left we see the tail is carried correctly, but the tail is too high set. On the right we see the tail carried correctly and it is correctly set. The tail should be carried straight with a slight curve or like a sickle. A tail that is a curled or rolled tail or a tail carried flat on the back is considered a fault. Puppies can be born with a full tail, a natural bobtail, or no tail at all. Bobtails are seen in all possible lengths. The fancy likes to see a happy tail. Most often the dog wags the tail when it's moving or when it's getting attention.
Sit in front of me, right here. Sit. Good. Kiss your cookies. Come here, George. Come on over. Come on over.
The image on the left demonstrates a tail carried too flat, almost on the back. On the right, we see a tail that is curled too much. The standard speaks to the forequarters by remarking that the upper arm should be oblique but not too steep. The shoulder blade should also be oblique without a high degree of steepness. The front legs are to be straight and parallel. The dog's front is to be broader than the rib cage. Due to the wide and deep chest, the front legs are placed rather wide. They must, however, never be placed so broadly that the movements turn to paddling. It is desirable that the upper arm be as long as the shoulder. Still discussing the forequarters, the pasterns must be strong and springy. The standard calls for dogs to have front dew claws. Feet should be small, oval, and moderately tight-knit. The upper arm must be normally angled to the shoulder. The paws must be neither hare feet nor cat's paws. Occasionally short and steep upper arms are seen in the breed. This affects the movements negatively and is not to the breed standard. Shown here on the left is a correctly oblique upper arm and shoulder. On the right, a rather steep upper arm is shown. The hindquarters of the Danish Swedish Farmdog, starting with the legs, should be parallel and well muscled. The thigh should be fairly broad, and the stifle should be well angulated, as is the hock joint. The hind feet are small, oval, and almost tightly knit. The rear legs must have good muscle, which presents rather wide thighs. Rear dew claws are acceptable. The dog in the image to the left exhibits very poor angulation in the rear. The dog in the image on the right illustrates correct rear angulation. Due to the shape of the Danish Swedish Farmdog's rib cage and width, the front legs move on a wider track than the rear legs. Overall, type and structure is more important than movement. Smooth and floaty movement usually means the dog is too long in the body. The movement should be brisk, moderate, and parallel. As long as the chest fills out correctly, young dogs that appear loose in the front movement will stabilize as they develop. If the croup is too sloping and/or if there are slight angulations in the rear leg movements will become too short. If the shoulder is too steep or the upper arm too short, the front movements will become too pendulum-like and short and therefore not efficient. On the down and back, the judge will look for the parallel movement of the legs, with the front being slightly wider than the rear. On the around, the judge will look at the top line and the stride of the dog. Shown in this image, we see correct typical movement of moderate steps. Next, we will see video of typical moderate steps. The coat of the farm dog should be short, hard, and smooth. The colors should present white as the dominating color with patches of different colors, sizes, and combinations. The coat must not be thin and transparent, nor must it be too long, wavy, coarse, or wire-haired. It must be hard on the body. A coat that is too soft is a fault. Acceptable colors over the white for the DSF are black, brown, agouti, yellow, and all shades of tan and fawn. The yellow dog is born white, and then, when the colored patches come in, they are irregularly edged. Patches may also be on the head with or without tan markings. Flecking is accepted. The head should not be entirely white. This is a fault. The dog has to be able to keep straw and dust away from the skin when hunting rats in the barn or the woodshed. Additionally, the coat has to be able to keep tall grass and humidity away from the skin when the dog is in the field to help herd cattle in for milking. The coat must therefore be close. Since the white color must dominate, it should be noticed if the entire body is colored. There should always be white between the body and the head or between the body and the tail. Small spots in the white are accepted. Feathering on the tail and legs are a fault. The following images show examples of the most common color varieties. The dogs are all of overall correct type. The dog in the last picture is also of correct type, though it has too much color. A note on faults. Any departure from the foregoing points should be considered a fault, and the seriousness with which the fault should be regarded should be in exact proportion to its degree and its effect on the health and welfare of the dog. A farm dog has to give the impression of being inelegant and compact, but all the while still be agile, bright, and flashing fast. The following should be considered faults: an elegant general appearance, low on legs, prick ears, a neck that is too long, a lack of depth in the chest, a flat or short rib cage. The dog is narrow in the front. The dog has a steep croup. The tail is curled or carried flat on the back. The head is all white. With regard to serious faults, a farm dog should never be aggressive or overly shy. Temperament is crucial, and even slight aggression must never be interpreted as guarding behavior. Farm dogs must be friendly and curious. The standard has only one disqualifying fault. Male animals must have two apparently normal testicles fully descended into the scrotum. The breed is judged on the table. There is no trial to confirm or prove the breed's ability to fulfill its original job. When judging and looking at the dogs, it should be kept in mind that the countries of origin still find it important that the function of the DSFs is to catch rats and mice. This means athletic and agile dogs of substantial body without being light, sporty, or elegant, and on the other end of the scale, without being so stout that it prevents their agility. The oral exam should be a front check of incisors and canines. Since the farm dog is a rat dog, it is important that both jaws and teeth be well formed. Weak and narrow muzzles with narrow jaws and small teeth must be judged as a fault. A level bite is accepted, but undershot bite must be judged as a serious fault. The Danish Swedish Farmdog should be shown natural with no trimming of the whiskers, as these aid the dog's ability to hunt vermin. When examining the farm dog, it should give the overall impression of a moderately rectangular, compact, small dog. It is important that it does not appear elegant. The top line must be slightly arched by the loin. No other pincer breeds have to have this top line. It is particular to the Danish Swedish Farmdog. The top line must not be too straight or flat, in other words, not terrier-like. While the top line has to be slightly arched, it is not to compromise good angulation, giving the dog the ability to move correctly. The Danish Swedish Farmdog's correct movements are with moderate steps and push. If too well angulated, the steps will become too long and the gait too floating. It is not supposed to have a big open side gait. On the other end of the scale, the steps are not to become too short and tripping. If the body is too short, the dog moves with legs that lift too high and that have a tendency to move on two tracks. If the body is too long, the gait becomes too long and floating. It has to be in between with the Danish Swedish Farmdog. The head and the expression of the farm dog is significant to the breed. The correct expression is of a forward, directed look. Dogs with slanted eyes placed low in the cheeks give the wrong expression. We do not assume that this breed was developed from other specific breeds as seen today, but rather has origin in some old pincer-type dog, probably from before the Viking era. Today we do see signs of other breeds having been mixed in, for example, Fox Terrier and a Hound variety, but those were mixed in long after the origin of the breed. Dogs of similar type and purpose can be found worldwide. Several other breeds can appear very much like this breed, in particular individuals that are borderline acceptable to their breed standard. In this matter, a less than perfect Danish Swedish Farm Dog can appear almost the same as a less than perfect dog of another breed, for example a smooth-coated Fox Terrier, a Jack Russell Terrier, a Parson Russell Terrier, or a Terrier Brasileiro. Regarding well-being, the Danish Swedish Farm Dog is an extremely healthy breed. It has no breed-specific health disorders. Regarding behavior, occasionally dogs with improper temperament do occur. The following is a collection of very breed-typical dogs, all with various detail flaws. The presenter will show these images again so that the participants can get an extended look at them. This video presentation is a part of the Judges Education Seminar presented by the Danish Swedish Farmdog Club of America. The presenter will subsequently provide more detailed information to answer questions and exhibit typical Danish Swedish farm dogs for examination.